Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, let's jump right in. Today we're tackling something really close to home for probably a lot of you listening. Choosing sports, hobbies, activities for your kids.
Right. And it feels so personal, doesn't it? Like your decision.
Exactly. But what if? What if those choices aren't entirely, yours? What if there are these huge external forces kind of nudging you?
Well, that's precisely what jumps out from the material we've gathered for this deep dive. We've got articles, notes, research.
A whole stack of it.
Yeah. And they all seem to point towards society, capitalism, even the internet, sort of subtly, or maybe not so subtly, engineering what kids do in their free time.
Okay, so our mission here is to unpack that, pull out the key stuff from these sources, and figure out how this engineering actually, plays out for you as a parent trying to make good choices.
Let's start with the ideal of the good parent. The sources show this concept, especially what they call intensive parenting, really took off after the 1980s.
Intensive meaning demanding a lot.
A lot. Huge amounts of time, effort, and, money. It's become almost like a performance.
A performance, like you have to show you're doing it right.
Kind of, yeah. Driven by expectations for kids to be great at, everything. And social media just pours gasoline on that fire, right?
No, absolutely. The highlight reels.
Yeah.
Constant comparison. Makes you feel like you're falling behind.
Exactly. That keeping up with the Joneses thing, but maybe amplified, it creates this pressure, this feeling that you have to sign your kids up for certain things because, everyone else is.
Even if it's super stressful or maybe not what your kid actually wants.
Right. And, underlying that are still these older cultural norms, gender roles maybe, subtly guiding things, like, certain sports being seen as more boy things.
Okay, so societal pressure, then add capitalism to the mix.
Oh, yeah. The sources are pretty clear on this. Youth sports, just as one example, it's not just kids playing anymore. It's massive. A huge business.
How huge are we talking?
Estimates vary, but somewhere between like $19 billion and maybe even $40 billion a year, just youth sports. Wow. That's a lot.
And that's just sports. The whole kids' recreational services market. Projections are talking trillions, like $2.8 trillion by 2032. It's enormous.
So what does that mean for parents, practically speaking?
Well, cost, mainly. A big financial burden. The data we looked at shows average spending on just one kid's main sport is often over $1,000 a year.
$1,000, wow.
Yeah, and costs are going up, so much so that about 20% of parents say they've had to cut back on activities just because of the money.
And are there specific numbers, like for popular sports?
For 2024, the sources mentioned averages like over $1,100 for baseball, soccer over $900, basketball over $800. You get the idea.
Right, so if you can't afford that.
Exactly. The sources call it a big equity issue. It becomes pay to play. If you don't have the cash, your kid might miss out on things other kids get to do. Opportunities lost.
And it's not just paying fees, is it? Kids are also targets. As consumers, yeah, definitely. They influence billions in family spending, pester power, And activities get tied up with brands, gear, status. It's all part of this commodified self-image, as one source put it.
And this whole activities culture, it's often pushed as being vital for college, right?
Yeah.
Build that resume early.
That's the pitch, yeah. But the sources, they offer a reality check. Less than 3% of high school athletes actually play in college. And scholarships. Forget full rides mostly. Maybe 1 in 10,000 gets even a partial sports scholarship.
So the odds are tiny, but the pressure is huge.
Incredibly huge. And it leads to kids being totally overscheduled, stressed out, burned out even.
Burnout, really?
Yeah, one study showed something like 70% of kids actually quit organized sports by their early teens. They just get tired of it. And all that scheduled time pushes out, just regular, unstructured playtime, which is also really important.
Okay, so we've got societal pressure, market forces. What about the digital age, the internet?
It's a double-edged sword, really. On one hand, fantastic resources, educational stuff, parent groups online, even virtual activities like coding or learning languages.
But there's a but.
There's always a but. New challenges, too, like kidfluencers, kids promoting products, blurring the lines between ads and fun content. It's tricky because young kids often can't tell the difference.
Direct marketing to kids, basically?
Pretty much. And then there's just the sheer amount of, junk online. Misinformation spreads like wildfire, especially on social media.
How does that affect kids?
The sources suggest young people are quite vulnerable. Some data points to kids becoming open to believing things like conspiracy theories around age 14 or so.
Wow. And that affects parents' decisions, too.
It can, yeah. This flood of potentially dubious information can fuel distrust, maybe in schools or doctors. The sources mention things like worries about curriculum or vaccine hesitancy becoming tangled up in this online ecosystem. It adds another layer of external influence on choices.
So let's try and wrap this up. If we boil it all down, what's the main takeaway from all this material?
I think the bottom line is that when you as a parent are trying to choose activities, you're not operating in a vacuum, it feels personal, but you're actually navigating this complex landscape that's been, well, engineered to a degree
Engineered by
by societal ideals of parenting, by these powerful market forces pushing commercialization everywhere, and by all the noise of influence of the digital world. They're not just background factors. They actively shape the options, the pressures, the whole game.
So it's changed childhood play itself.
For many, yeah. It seems to have shifted it away from just, intrinsic fun and exploration towards something more driven by getting ahead, by external validation, by profit.
Okay. So maybe the final thought these sources leave you, the listener, with is this. In this environment, with all these pressures, societal, commercial, digital picture, how do you actually figure out what your child genuinely loves and needs and protect your well-being? How do you balance it all?